and there'll probably be some more May events trickling into the system in probably the next week or two. So stay tuned for that. I'm joined tonight by, in order of when they appeared on the Zoom call, Sean, Kurt, Harmony, and Sammy from KWM, all of whom will probably be popping in at some point or another during the tasting. As many of you know, this tasting came about partly because Springbank demand be crazy, and sometimes it's hard to figure out how to fairly allocate and sell bottles. And we want to try them as much too. And we also take pride and joy in seeing bottles get opened. And that's how this tasting came about. It was also a way of narrowing down what would probably have been a 400 or 500 person ballot just for that Palo Cortado. So it is what it is. You're the lucky few that got in, the lucky 40 customers who got a set of samples. There will be an announcement in the next few days. We did get an additional case of Palo Cortado, which we're going to distribute in a different way, but there is a parcel of bottles that are exclusive to those of you taking part tonight, but also a few other things. After the tasting, I'll be sending out a ballot form that you can fill out. It is only for people taking part in this tasting. Sadly, if you're watching on Facebook and didn't get samples, you don't get to play with this particular ballot. But there will be another one in the newsletter in the next few days or so. So yeah, fun lineup, great whiskeys. Starting off with something a little different. This one is, you can file it into the category of things that we just tucked aside because we didn't know what we were going to do with them. But it was the Cadenhead 7-star 30-year-old cask strength blend. And I'll be honest, like, this is one of those ones where there were so few bottles, I wasn't really sure what to do with it. And I don't even really know that much about it because in some cases like this, it's hard to justify putting a ton of effort into something that, you know, there's only a handful of bottles of. I think we sold it by ballot with the exception of a bottle that we kept back to put into a lineup. And that's how it ended up in tonight's range. Yeah. The strength on it, 48.2%. I don't think I've even tried this before, so I guess we'll just dive right into it. And, you know, obviously with the color and with Cadenhead and what they've been doing in recent years, you'd probably assume or expect there'd be a fair bit of sherry there, but it's not quite as sherry as I was expecting on the nose. Lots of grain, sort of like a tart caramel note in there too. I'm gonna not, well, I was gonna drag Kurt in, but he was blurry for a second there. I might start with Sean, who looks like he's in a hybrid Persian rug emporium / library / bar. What do you get on the nose, Sean, on this one?
Well, so far it smells pretty much exactly what the descriptions would say. So it smells like it's got a little bit of age on it. It's definitely like, this must be a proper blend, right? Because it
Yeah.
definitely smells like it's pretty grain heavy. You're right with the sherry. It's not like super intensely sherry. It's actually like, I get quite a lot of bourbon oak on there, but it might be like fresh bourbon wood.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? The only reason I brought the sherry into all this, which admittedly it muddies the waters a little bit, is just the fact that we've seen so much sherried, like blended or sherried single malt from Cadenhead over the last few years. And so I just kind of assumed that it was probably going to be sherried as well, but it's not. So, Harmony, how about yourself?
The palate's really nice. It's creamy, it's fruity, and I love the spice on the finish. It's like ginger and oak, and you get the nice tannins in there. It's really well done.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It has that, I think you can get a sense of its age in there. There's an elegance to it. It's fruity. Yeah, but it does come across on the palate, especially now. And maybe it's because I was writing tasting notes for single malts for the last hour. It is very grain forward to me on the palate. Kurt, you want to dive in for a moment on this one?
Kind of dig it. I didn't know what to expect with this one. I sort of regret not trying to track down a bottle when it was available. I like the richness of flavor. It feels like one of those blends from years and years and years ago that were generally served up younger, but now we get that same sort of style when they get to be 30 years old. I really like this one. It's cool.
The promo on this is it was inspired by blends created in decades past, which you know, I don't know, in some ways kind of seems like a cop out because like everybody seems to be creating things inspired by the past now. I guess we're at that tipping point in whiskey where everyone's hunting for nostalgia because maybe there's too much young stuff out there. But yeah, I agree with all you guys. I think it's got some nice complexity to it. It's elegant. I don't even remember what this sold for back when we had it, but anyway, Sammy, why don't you I don't know if you've got any additional thoughts you want to share.
I actually quite like the finish. It's actually quite long. It's surprisingly long.
There you go. The finish is the keynote on that one. Yeah, it's fresh. I mean, it comes across like a blend. It's quite pleasant. Yeah, I like it. Kurt, I'm gonna buck the trend with you on this one and say, I'm not really sure I would have hunted this one down. But all of us to an extent are sort of spoiled and yeah, I don't know. I'm comparing it maybe against like some recent Compass Box bottlings that we've had and put into tastings that I thought were more interesting. And
Those are good.
yeah. So
Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
no, you go.
I'm definitely an over sentimentalizer. I kind of think I get really geeky about history with whiskey, closed distilleries, and anything that's like way back in time. And I think blends are a huge part of what makes whiskey. So I think every now and then we have to go back and find some cool blends because it's just part of that story and part of that history. There's not too many on the market that I want to drink, if I'm being honest. So when I find one that I would actually buy, it's sort of almost as exciting as finding a really good value with malt.
Some of this shows a bit of subjectivity as well too, because I was just scanning through to see if I could find a good photo of this to share with everyone because it's a Springbank product or like a lot of these things, we just don't bother. We can't put them on our website anymore. Like we just can't have that stuff up there or people will get cranky. So I went digging and like one of the first reviews that came up for it said that people that are sulfur intolerant might get a bit cranky about this one. I'm just thinking like there isn't even a remote trace of sulfur on this to me. So anyway, it's an interesting little blend. I'll throw it up on screen for everyone. Who knows? There might be a shop somewhere in Alberta where there's a dusty bottle of this lingering on the shelf, which kind of makes me feel a little sad. But I have to say I love the packaging. It's super old school, and in that context, it ticks all the boxes. And good for Cadenhead putting out like a unique, different sort of blended Scotch and going mega retro. Oh, and that's the Enigma, right? Is that the 25 or the 15?
I didn't get the 15, but this is the 25 if you're looking for like another one of those old school kind of style of blends. And this one is still available and it is wicked too. Price is brilliant on it.
Yeah, cool. Well, Matt's saying he'd take this over the Compass Box Ultramarine. So but yeah, there you go. So anyway, I don't know. The one that I liked the most that was out recently, I think it was the Delos, but I don't remember. I mean, man, there's too many whiskeys. I can't keep track of all this stuff anymore. So the main show we're here for, I think that Cadenhead was the bonus bottle. We sort of threw that into the lineup because it was there and I didn't know what we were going to do with it. And, I have these boxes and stashes. Harmony's tried to catalog them of things that I've set aside that I thought would be fun to put in tastings someday. And, we got to sprinkle some of these things in there eventually. Otherwise, they're just gathering dust. But yeah, that's why that put in. So the main show tonight is Springbank and Kilkerran. And I don't know, when I was thinking about this today and like, how do we sum up Springbank? And, you can say things like it's the distillery we love to hate. I think that doesn't really convey the right message though, because I don't hate Springbank. maybe frustrated by the fact that there's never any stock and everybody wants it and people get cranky and do stupid things like call the store and complain, which by the way, that's a good way to get banned as a customer by complaining to my staff that you can't get Springbank. Just don't do it. It's bad form. But I was thinking more like maybe the more appropriate thing is that you get hurt most by the people you love, or in this case, the distilleries you love. Like I've been a fan of Springbank for as long as I've been in whiskey. I remember the good old days back when the 21 that was actually a 30-something-year-old whiskey in a flimsy cardboard box was on the market. And just how good it was and how inexpensive. Kurt's a lot of little flexing there. I I was fortunate, or at Kensington was fortunate as a business to bottle a couple of casks of Kilholman or of Springbank over the years. A 96 Manzanilla and Oloroso Sherry. Kurt's probably got them at hand there too. There you go. Look at that. Absolutely incredible whiskeys. And that was back at a time when no one was interested in them. No one wanted them. I mean, they just, everyone wanted the easy stuff. Like all the other shops wanted Macallan. They wanted Glenfiddich. They wanted Balvenie. And I don't know, I found common cause. I love the fact that this distillery was small, that it was stubbornly traditional, that, this was back at the time when Springbank was still adhering to rules from the 19th century about how you could not malt and distill at the same time. So Springbank, even if you go back about 15 years, 12 years, they were only malting barley or distilling, but never both. And they would do them for about 3 months and then switch. And it was just bonkers. You're like thinking like, why aren't you guys, if you guys malt it all the time, which you're allowed to, by the way, you'd immediately double your production. But they just never had that mindset. They're very traditional. Kurt might remember the quote better than me, but Mark Renier said something less than charitable about them at one point in time because Springbank closed. And this was, I want to say around 2010, the Scotch whiskey industry was in the process of going nuts. Like prices for everything were going through the roof. And everyone else was going to 24/7 shifts. And what did Springbank do? They shut down. They did renovations. I think they got rid of some staff they'd been looking for a way to get rid of. And they just sort of restructured and started from scratch. And Kurt, do you remember what he said? It was like, it's a crazy distillery run by a crazy person, or what was, do you remember the quote?
No, I don't. I honestly don't. Yeah, no, I don't. I'll just shut up there.
I mean, the thing is, like, some of it was not entirely wrong, but it was just why it needed to be said at all raised a whole bunch of questions because it's its own business. I guess what I'm trying to say is Springbank has always done things its own way. It's not too concerned about whether you like how they do it or whether you think it's the right way to do it. It's how they do it and it's how they're going to keep doing it. And, it's funny when you hear people say, oh, did you hear Springbank is doubling production? I mean, I don't think they've quite managed that. And I'm like, cool. So we'll only be short half as much in the future as we are now. It is kind of, there's always going to be shortages of Springbank. It's always going to be hard to come by. And maybe in some ways for a long-term play, that's a smart brand strategy for them because their product's always going to be in demand. It's always going to be sought after. And there's a good reason why people like it. And it's because they make great whiskey. It's an old school style whiskey. They make 4 different kinds if you count Kilkerran, 5, I guess, with their peated there. And they do a lot of things really well. And they're nice people. So we can go down the rabbit hole of some fun stories and talk about some of the, crazy things that have happened there over the years. But ultimately, yeah, we've got a great range of whiskey. So let's dive in with the Hazelburn 10-year. I don't know if it was the same for everyone else tonight, but my bottle label was upside down. So I don't know if everyone else's was upside down too. That almost threw me for a loop. Sammy or Harmony,
No,
were you guys?
that was for you. It's the sticky label, so we can't take it off. So that was a staff pick. Mistakes go in staff pick boxes. So.
Oh, look at that. I mean, there's strategy and thought put behind this, which is awesome. I mean, it was messing with me a little bit because, anyway, it doesn't take a lot to turn it around and read it from the other side, but what are you going to do? So Springbank, as I'm sure most of you know, 3 different styles of whiskey. They make the regular Springbank, which is, they say 2.5 times distilled, but I think it's more like 2.8 times distilled or something like that. They make long row, which is heavily peated and double distilled. And then they make their Hazelburn, which is unpeated and triple distilled. So those are the three main styles at Springbank. And then I saw Sammy saying, what are the 5 styles? I think there's Kilkerran and then there's Kilkerran Heavily Peated. I think it has to be kind of treated as a separate style just by virtue of the fact that it's so distinct from the regular Kilkerran, but we can debate that. So we're starting with the Hazelburn 10, 100% ex-bourbon, 46%. This is, I suppose, Springbank's answer to Auchentoshan, but I don't know. I don't know that that even really does it justice. I think it's a lovely, creamy, fruity malt. I'll put it up on screen here. We're going to have to use the Springbank's distillery website tonight because, as I mentioned, these are not on our site. There you go. What do we all think of the Hazelburn 10-year-old to start off with? I'll start with maybe Harmony this time.
Thanks. Is this like a tiny bit peated?
I don't know. I mean, it's first fill ex-bourbon. Like maybe there's some barrel char, like a hint of like wood smoke coming off of the spirit.
I remember a long time, well, many years ago, at one point, Andy said once in a while they might use ex long row casks, but I'm not sure if that's the case here or not.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thought. I mean, one other one to remember here is like, what if they transitioned from Hazelburn or to Hazelburn from Springbank or long row without properly rinsing out the stills or spirit receiver? Like you could end up in a situation where you get a trace amount of peat coming from that.
Yeah. The nose is quite vibrant, and I got lots of like caramelized fruit on there. Kind of toffee, butterscotch notes, but the palate to me, you get like that kind of smoky char in there.
So lush on the palate. To me,
Yeah.
this is like the nose and palate on this are like a fruit flan. There's just tons of fruit. There's that nice bit of like pastry in there as well too. Very buttery. You can see that sort of almost like milky lactic note coming out in it a little bit too. Sean, I'm gonna pick on you. Why don't you go next?
So as Harmony mentioned, like I actually do pick up a little bit of peat on the palate too. But like the nose, when I was first picking it up, I love, you mentioned creamy. I don't get it's tough to get that on the nose, but I think I did still kind of get some of that, but it was more like that kind of cream of wheat cereal kind of like note. But the palate is quite tropical. Like I for just 10 years, I don't know. I don't know any other 10-year that achieves flavors like that, at least not very many.
You know, the funny thing is, like, when Springbank started to get popular, Hazelburn was kind of like, other than maybe the Long Row Envy, Hazelburn was like the last one for people to like start hoarding. And so for a while, like it was one of those ones that we still had good access to and would have frequently on the shelf. But I mean, it's a good example of why maybe that's not the case as people started branching out and realized how good this was too. Sammy, you want to chime in on the Hazelburn 10?
Yeah, I agree with you. For me, it tastes like like a custard tart, a lot of like a melon, with a little bit. I won't say peat, it's more like a smoke for me. Yeah, just a hint of smoke.
Cool, thanks, Sammy. Kurt?
Grotesquely underrated spirit. It's to me, it's like that. Do you guys remember those god awful like ambrosia salads that would show up at events with like marshmallows and oranges and stuff like that in them?
Yeah.
Absolutely awful. But
It's a good
that,
thing
like,
those have not come back, and long may they not come back.
absolutely agree. I hate marshmallow more than almost anything in life.
We're
But
just
it's kind of a Sorry?
I mean, putting like other things in gelatin is just, maybe it's my ADD, but it's super gross.
I can't do gelatin at all, like gummy worms, gummy bears. I hate anything gelatiny, so it doesn't fly with me. But this is all oranges and like those creamy notes you guys talked about. Ryan said he liked the yogurt note as well, and I kind of piggyback on that too. It's that just slightly tangy, kind of yeasty sort of thing going on there too. Really, really pretty. I dare say some of the Hazelburn 10s that I've had recently have outshone the Springbank 10s, and those have been top notch too. So there's been some great Hazelburns.
Yeah. Now, Kurt, where do you weigh in on the peat or not peat? Do you pick up any in this?
Yeah, there's always a little bit with it. Like you gotta think even when they're air drying, they're like there's blowing smoke through stuff.
Yeah.
The barrels are being passed from thing to thing. I have seen phenol counts for Hazelburn. It is really low, but it is intentionally hot air dried, not peat dried. But you're always gonna pull a bit of that, I think. So,
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, that was that was quite a treat to start off with here. Um, definitely showing very well. Now, next we're on to, I just want to for a second, I was like, oh, and I think it's that upside down label that is messing with my head. I was like, Hazelburn 21. I don't see Hazelburn. Do we have Hazelburn 20? But we do have Hazelburn 21. It's the next one in the lineup, and I've got the sample staring right in front of me here. So this is the 2023 edition, 43.2%, which is a very low natural cask strength. 80% bourbon, 10% sherry, 10% port. Let's give this one a whirl and see what we think. I'll throw it up on the screen here. Just grabbing my glass. So there we go. Not a lot of this comes into the market. And again, you know, we like the idea of being able to put some of these rare bottlings into the tasting because yeah, we want to try them, and it's one less bottle collecting dust in somebody's closet. So what do we think about this? I'm going to start with Kurt this time.
there's a huge disconnect between nose and palate. I kind of jumped ahead, and I'm afraid to throw the note out there unless I buy somebody ahead of time. The nose is all big fruits, really kind of tangy. A lot of red fruits. I think it drinks, and nose is a little bit younger than its years on this one too. The thing I love about this distillery and stuff like that is even when they're producing safe expressions like this, like what the masses would probably drink, it's still a challenging, farmy, dirty kind of whiskey, really oily. It doesn't fit in the flavor camp of your Glenfiddichs and Glenlivet's and stuff. Even the softest Springbanks are still probably too hard for most people. So I kind of love that we're that group that loves these things.
Before I ask someone else to chime in, Ego is asking about whether this is actually natural cask strength at 43.2, and it is. It's probably unusual that you would see 21-year-old Hazelburn at such a low ABV, but it might have been that they had a couple of like less than well coopered casks that were just particularly leaky. So it can definitely happen. It's not common. But yeah, it would have gone into cask probably like all other Springbanks at around 63.5%. And yeah, that might explain some of those sort of tropical tones coming out on it as well. Sammy, why don't you go next?
Yeah, for me, it's same like I can smell a lot of red fruit. There's a lot of caramel, and I haven't really tasted it.
Mm. We're rushing you.
Now I'm just nosing. There's a lot going on, on the nose. But this one here.
Yeah, well, the red fruit call that both you and Kurt had, I think, is great. Like, definitely on the nose, like sort of the strawberry Twizzlers. You can add like licorice nibs or like those red, whatever is it, cherry nibs on the palate. Sort of artificial fruit flavors, but yeah, it's quite pretty. Harmony, why don't you go next?
My initial nose was like full on tropical gummy bears, like opening a fresh bag of gummy bears. But then it takes over into those red fruits and kind of apple skins and kind of burnt caramel almost, like not burnt, but it's going there. And then the palate is completely the other way. It's like heavy and dunnaged and smoky and woody. And Kurt, 1,000%, like that hint of mezcal kind of comes through. It kind of leads you there. Very cool.
Yeah, there's like a musty, dunnagey note to it.
Yeah.
Earlier on, I was thinking, like, especially on the palate, there was something sort of mushroomy about it. And I think that mezcal earthy note's a good call. David, your comment about needs more sherry is debatable. I think, I personally would have loved to just see this straight bourbon at 21 years. I'd love to see how gorgeous that would have been. Sean, your thoughts?
So I guess like on the palate, like the first and foremost for me is mandarin orange and maybe even a little bit of burnt orange peel around it. With Kurt's note about it, kind of like defying its age a little bit, like maybe not being as old or drinking not as old. It feels like that until you get that grippy wood tannin, and then it's like, oh, there's some cool leathery old, and you guys mentioned like dunnage and that those more earthier tones. I think those lean towards those older tones, and I don't really get that in a lot of young stuff. So yeah, it still represents its age nice. But what I kind of like about these releases too is I guess all their 21s, all the barrels are always so all over the place. Like right now it's, what was it, 80 bourbon, 20 sherry or something like that, or
10 sherry,
some
10 port.
port. And then like last year's was, I think, more bourbon heavy as well. The year I bought one like 2 or 3 years ago that was much more sherry heavy and visible. Like, I don't know. I love the variation year to year. It makes it so exciting to see what we get when we receive them.
Well, I mean, the variation, Sean, I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, that's one of the things that I think, and I know Kurt and I have talked about this enormously, how much we love the variation in Springbank and in particular, even things like their 15. And I think what people have to remember is just like how small batch a lot of these are compared to other companies. And that might give you a sense of why there's such variation. And I think the other part of it is their approach. Like they're not as concerned about having them taste the same from year to year to year as putting out something good. And, I think if you do that and you own that, then that's great. I mean, they're going to sell out anyway. They're still putting out a good product. And if they vary from one year to the next, they vary. But yeah, I think it's a fun expression. Some of my favorite bottlings of Springbank 21 were the ones that had rum cask. Not because the rums added anything to them, but because the rum casks were, those are like exceptionally tired, overused wood. So it's just a vessel for oxidation. And we talk about, I especially mentioned this a lot in tastings, how much I love that oxidation in spirit. And, you don't get that if the wood is the dominant flavor. So, I love a good sherried whiskey at the right times, but for me, for especially a distillery that's got such an interesting spirit profile as Springbank, I tend to prefer it in bourbon because you just see more of it out there. I don't mind having a bit of sherry in there, but I want to be able to taste the spirit. Cool. So that was the Hazelburn 21 year. And someone's saying they think we put it in a tasting last year. Come on, we can't remember last year. There's like a tasting every week. Can barely remember what we did 2 weeks ago. But it's still fun. So there you go. Shall we move on to the Springbank 10? I think when we started tonight, or maybe it was just before we got started in the chat with the team here, we were talking about how much, we especially love trying the 10-year-old to see how much it varies from batch to batch. Because it does tend to be a bit more bourbon heavy than the 15. But again, I think one of the reasons why we've sort of fallen in love with it is just that because it is more bourbon heavy, it tends to have a slightly cleaner profile. So current or the most recent batches of this, 60% bourbon, 40% sherry, bottled at 46%. Sadly, just not enough of it out there, especially given the price point and the age. And yeah, Ryan, almost certainly 2023 stock. In fact, did you guys, I think we put, yeah, there's bottling dates. It looks like there's bottling dates on most of the whiskeys. So this was bottled, I guess if I read the dates, I'm reading it the British fashion. It's the 3rd of August, 2023 is when this particular batch of Springbank was bottled. You always get confused because the Europeans do dates a different way from North Americans, and I'm never sure which one we're working from. But thoughts. So this time, Sean, I started with you last time, or I ended with you. Why don't you start off on the 10-year-old?
Well, so I was super excited to try this again, or not again, but this version of it. It was kind of surprising to see so much sherry on there for the color, to be honest with you. But
yeah, but it could be refill sherry. They're not telling us.
There's it seems the peat might be like slightly decreased from previous bottlings that I've had.
Well, in the palate, I mean,
Oh.
it's just a lush fruit bomb.
It's just such an intense example of interesting, like lightly peated barley. Like I don't. It's easily one of my favorite drams. Period. Like of just like an everyday thing, but it's one of my favorite expressions of theirs by far. I don't know. Yeah, I sorry. I just tasted it for the first time here at.
Yeah, it's lovely. Before I go to the next person, I mean, Sean's talking about how it comes across maybe a little less peated than some other batches of Springbank 10. Again, batch consistency with Springbank is all over the place, and it's not just because of the casks, but it's also because of the malting floor and you know drying the barley over a peat fire at the distillery. Temperature can influence that, humidity can influence that, how much peat smoke the barley picks up. Like if you want consistent, like dialed in, perfect levels of phenols, you have to use commercial malting. There's no way to do it from a floor malting perspective. But that's again one of the things we love about it is some batches are more peated than others. Maybe some are more sherried. But it's that variety, it's the variation. Harmony, you want to go next?
Yeah, the nose was cool. I like initially I had kind of like a salted bitter chocolate and cotton shirt porridge thing going on. The palate is very fruit forward and yeah, not as peat as I remember, but it's still in there and it's integrated really nicely. And the finish for me had this really nice like hint of peach that I wasn't expecting. So
And like so little smoke, so little,
yeah.
like it's I mean, if I tried this blind, I might be more tempted to think it might even be almost Hazelburn style.
Mhm.
It's not quite
That
as
was said in the
crisp.
chat, and I I definitely agree. I love that you can still, taste that barley. Yeah.
Mhm. Um, Kurt,
The kind of whiskey that proves they don't have to be old to be exceptional, and the kind of whiskey that makes you frustrated with all the other distilleries out there. That,
yeah.
this is a 10-year-old whiskey. It has no business being this bloody good and consistently this good, even though the whiskey isn't consistent. It's a rock star. For a 10-year-old whiskey, it's a rock star.
Yeah. Before I chime Sammy, and one other note that I got that I kept wanting to throw in there are like those Flintstone vitamins. Like when you open like a fresh bottle of Flintstone vitamins, which I haven't done in like 15 or 20 years. Chloe's 24 now, so
I
but it
was at
was
the
time.
dollar store. I was at the
Yeah.
dollar store and bought sweet tarts, and it kind of has that sort of vibe to them, but those awesome sugar chalk
Mhm.
candies.
Nice.
It seems
Sammy?
texturally a little chalky too, or like
Yeah.
almost like clay or something on the palate, or something that's just a little bit gritty or something about it. It's
There's
strange.
a nice little flinty minerality rockets, as Kartik says. Sammy, you want to chime in?
Yeah, for me, it has like the chalky taste is almost like coming from like a banana.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever try the banana, it's not quite ripe. It has a little bit chalky taste to it,
Mhm.
and a little bit of smoke, but not too much. And I also got a little bit of grassy taste to it. I don't know if that's just me.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I mean, that's that maltiness, that maltiness coming in for a younger whiskey. It makes sense. Um, all right, I'm looking now at the Kilkerran. I want to make sure you've got yeah, I do have the right one here. 16-year-old. This is bottled May 1, 2023. 60 sherry, 35 bourbon, 5% rum. I'm pretty sure Kilkerran, and this is classic J&A Mitchell and Co. They still haven't quite got their website up to date yet. So I've gone to Whiskey Base for the bottle shot on this one. But there you go. There's the 2023 edition of the Kilkerran 16. And since I ended with you, Sammy, and I know this might be rushing you a little bit, do you want to kick us off with the 16-year-old?
Well, the nose and the palate is totally different. The nose is actually so light, delicate.
Mm-hmm.
When I try it, it's a lot of like caramel, like a candy apple. Yeah, for me.
Yeah. It's quite like creamy, lush. I find the smoke has got a bit more weight to it than it did in Springbank, and I believe they have a relatively similar phenol level from the standpoint of the barley, or they're trying to get to that point. The saltiness really comes in that too, like nice creamy, lush fruits, especially on the palate. Sean, you've already chimed in, so I'm going to pick on you next. You're not as jazzed with this 16 as with past bottlings. Or
Sorry, that was
the-
the Springbank again. Although I do have a question. Like they're using their same malt for the Kilkerran as well, right? It's all their own stuff.
Yes. And
Okay.
Kurt, it's the same malt spec as Springbank, isn't it?
Yeah, same malt spec. I don't know how they're going to manage it, but from what I understand, Kilkerran's going full term right away. So I don't know if they're going to have their own malt course as well. But Springbank isn't going to give a malt for both, I don't think.
I mean, I've been there enough to know the malt floor is not being used consistently, but wasn't there also talk of putting in a drum maltings or something that they were going to put in their own? I mean, there's always talk of things they're going to do or thinking of doing.
And I should add too, and this is kind of sad, but I'm pretty sure if you look back through previous years of the malt whiskey yearbook, it said Springbank's capacity was 750,000. This year says it's 500. So, and they never produced a capacity either, about half of that.
They've never produced 500,000. I mean, I remember getting in an argument with someone about this last year because I was talking about how Kilholman was at 500 and going like to 750 and then 1,000,000. And that was double Springbank. They're like, no, that's not double Springbank. And I was like, okay, right, you're right. Springbank made 280,000 liters. I'm sorry, that's not 250. So they did slightly more than half of Kilholman's production. And Kilkerran has never been more than like 20 or 30,000 liters. So the fact that they're going to take it full time, I think, is great because although it's not the same, like it's a similar profile, it is, you know, it's an interesting malt as well. Kurt, what are your thoughts on the 16?
There's a kind of weird, slightly fermenty, cheesy note sort of behind all the big fruits and stuff on the nose. It's a slightly off kilter spirit for me compared to Springbank, but in all the right ways, just like Springbank, except it's all kind of quirky. The Kilkerran story is incredible. It's going to be one of those ones that we never forget. It's going to be whiskey lore, how it came to be started and everything, where the equipment came from, how it was all pieced together and everything. I think Kilkerran is starting to get its day in the sun and it's well deserved. So hopefully they do go to full-time production. Hopefully we can see a lot more go market.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I mean, we're assuming that most people in this chat know the story behind it, but effectively it's, you know, it was the distillery opened out of spite. Headley Wright felt Campbellton should be a region. The Scotch Whisky Association said no. And he said, well, the Lowlands are a region and there's only 3 distilleries. So if Campbellton had 3 distilleries, then, you know, Campbellton would have to be a region too. And they said, yeah, sure, Headley, right. Of course it would. And I think they just assumed that was the end of the argument. But Headley Wright opened a distillery just to kind of stick his finger in their eye, essentially, and make Campbellton a region again and give it the respect he felt that it was deserved. But yeah, it's a cool place. It's a cool distillery. And I don't know if I'm crazy here, but like, I don't even see I don't even see Kilkerran listed in this year's malt whiskey yearbook. Is it just lumped in with Springbank?
No, it'd be under Glengyle.
Oh, right. God, how could I forget?
But I don't know what Kilkerran's capacity ever was, to be honest with you. It's got to be long shy of.
According to this, it's 750,000 liters. So they've been doing approximately 5% of that is my rough off the top of my head calculation. Hopefully they'll be doing more of it. And but yeah, no, that malt comment, I know Matt in the chat said that he was under the understanding that Kilkerran only used Springbank floor malted barley for their heavily peated. I don't know that for sure. That's something I'd have to dig into and have a look at. Harmony, I don't think we've let you chime in on this one yet.
I really am liking this. I I noticed at first like the peat was different than what we had, and Sean, you nailed it for me. You were reading my mind. It's kind of more dunnage, farmy, sorry, than the other one. I had a little bit more like leather smoke on there and polish, but it is like turning into like such a fruit, creamy barley, tons of fruit. I love the tannins that it leaves in my mouth from the peat. It's just really good. I only poured a small amount of all of my whiskeys, but so far I emptied this one into my glass. So really
Yeah.
enjoying it. Definitely have not had a lot of Kilkerran at this age. So
Yeah. So here's an interesting fact for everybody who's tempted to look. They are going to produce 100,000 liters of Springbank this year. So, or of Kilkerran, 100,000 liters of Kilkerran. So that's a pretty big shift. But before you get too excited, just know that it's going to be 16 years before that translates into more 16-year-old. So, which is one of the things when people like, did you hear what Springbank's going to do? And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, but that means we're not going to see it for at least 10 more years. So anyway, it's tinged. And Matt was correct. The barley comes both from Springbank, but also from malting plants. And I would expect that with the 100,000 liters of production this year, a significant portion of that's going to have to come from malting plants, though there are plans to put a drum maltings on site. So there you go. We learn something every day. Let's move on to the Palo Cortado. The reason that presumably at least a handful of you are here tonight is because you saw that and you got intense whiskey FOMO, which is understandable. So here I will put it up on screen next. So 2023 bottling 55%, 10,200 bottles released worldwide. The whiskey is not full-term maturation Palo Cortado. I believe 4 years, no, 6 years ex-bourbon, followed by 4 years in Palo Cortado sherry hogsheads, made from Spanish oak. So, you know, one of the things that a lot of people don't know about sherry casks is that, well, frankly, actually, there's a lot of things people don't know about sherry casks, including that most of them are seasoned casks. They're not maturation casks. So if you have this romantic idea in your head that the Scotch whiskeys you're drinking from sherry casks are from casks that were seasoned long-term with sherry that people then drank, you're mistaken. Most of the sherry casks, the vast majority, are now just seasoned casks. But the other thing is that there's two streams of oak. There's both American oak and European oak, Spanish oak used for sherry casks, and they will often give you a quite distinct profile. Curiously, the ones for drinking sherry, I believe, are more often American oak, and they actually prefer that because it gives a lighter touch to the wine. And I believe if you look at like a lot of the traditional old school sherry casks, curiously, I think a lot of them were that American oak, including a lot of the Gordon MacPhail casks. So anyway, Palo Cortado, what do we think about this? Harmony, I think you were last time. Why don't you be first this time?
I originally said it was Skittles, like it was like full on fruit. It's starting to go a little bit funky into cheese notes. I wish I remembered the tasting notes from the first time I tried this. It's really beautiful.
There's something that reminds me of like lipstick on the nose. Like there's like a waxy, almost fruity element to it. How's the palate?
Palate is juicy. A little drying. I think it brings forth those nutty notes on the nose. Oh, it's tons of grain in there, or like malt in there, which is really nice.
Travis's comment is bang on. I mean, the nose is good. The palate on this is great. I mean, for a sherry cask whiskey, I also wanted to hate this or dislike it, but man, it's got a really nice palate delivery. It's the full package. Kurt, what are your thoughts? Have we lost you?
I did not expect this to be like this at all. It's a weird one. I actually was scribbling down notes on this. Said it's like somebody spilled cow shit in the soup pot. I get some graham cracker There's lots of cinnamon. You can buy those hard. They're kind of hard candies. You chew through the outer shell and it's all gummy inside. They're little red sour cherry things. You get a bit of that. Bank married together. I love it.
Kurt, I'm sure that was great. I think we caught about 25% of it. It was like your stream was getting expanded and contracted and now you're frozen. But I got a few touches on that. Maybe we'll get another comment from you later. I just got a note of ketchup chips in here. Like, you know, the ones, the nice ones that they sell at Peasant, not the old Dutch, but like the, whatever, the hard bite ketchup chips.
Sorry, Andrew, there's no good ketchup chip. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's not very Canadian, Harmony. You gotta show some love to the ketchup chips. Sean, do you want to chime in on the Palo Cortado?
I was surprised how mellow the sherry was on the nose. I thought it was going to be a little bit more intense. Like, I've had a couple of Palo Cortado sherries, and they're definitely a little bit more in. They're more intense than a Fino, not as intense as like Olorosa, and of course, obviously not as sweet like PX or anything like that. I love the farmy note on the nose. It still bursts out just as much as the others, as other more farm forward Springbanks. This also exemplifies that mysterious funk that whiskeys from there might have that nobody really knows why, or you know, it's kind of hard to describe what exactly it is too, but this kind of has it in spades. But the palate is a much more, not gooey, but leaning towards slightly sweeter, like wine gummy, like candy like sherry, without being so rich and dark and like jammy. It's not, I wouldn't call it jammy, but it shows the wine really nicely.
Mm-hmm. Sammy.
For me, at the beginning, the nose is more like a like black grape or black currant, and then starting to turn into like a hay, like a fresh cut hay, yeah, like a farming note to it. And on the palate, it's actually quite sweet. For me, it's almost like a dehydrated mango.
Cool. Is anyone else kind of creeped out how like Kurt is frozen in time? Like, did like he get swallowed up by like a time bubble and he's just stuck there? Like, I'm surprised he hasn't gotten kicked out yet, or he's tried to log back in. Anyway, it's kind of funny. There he goes. He's disappeared. Intense debate between whether these are more like the old Dutch or the hard bite ketchup chips. But I'm going hard bite. I'm in on those. I'm 100% in on those. I think it's quite lovely. Palo Cortado, you know, you would think that in this case that these are proper sherry maturation casks. I guess it's kind of hard to know, or if they just seasoned them with this specific style of sherry. But back in the day when we did our Kensington Wine Market Springbank casks, they were from a parcel of casks that the distillery had bought as an experiment. And they did Fino, Palo Cortado, Manzanilla, Amontillado, Oloroso, PX, and it was cool. We were given a choice between like one of each of those styles from the same vintage. And when we went back the next year to pick our second cask, the funny thing is one of the customers who was with me took really, really diligent notes. And the cask that was our second favorite the first year was the one we picked the next year that we went back and we bottled a second Springbank. So anyway, Harmony's triggered by ketchup chips, it seems. So and Kurt, you just probably need to like restart and log back in. It would probably be fine. But yeah, graham crackers, cinnamon, Jolly Ranchers, little round sour cherry candies like Cavalan, Amroot, Springbank Infinity Bottle. There you go. Anything else on the Palo Cortado, guys, before we move on to the next dram? No. All right. So, man, I really like it. I think I like how the sherry is there. It's a component in it, but it's not running roughshod over the whiskey. Long row, 21-year-old. I don't remember when we last tried a long row 21 in a Kensington tasting. Maybe we've done it. Maybe we haven't. We probably have, but This is the 2023 edition. It's the oldest expression of long row ever bottled, although they do have or core range bottling that they've ever done. They do have some older stuff, and I think we'll see limited amounts of it moving forward. This particular release, 65 sherry, 35% bourbon, 46%. It definitely looks leaning more on the sherried side of things. So yeah, you're right, Chuck. There was that 23 year. There have been single casks, but it's just in terms of a core range, like I don't believe they've done like a 25 core range yet. They've all been like single cask releases. So but I was under the impression, and like Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, did we try like a almost 30-year-old long row when we were there? Does that ring a bell?
I think it was in the 23 range, if I remember correctly, but I don't know if it was near 30.
Yeah. I thought we tried like something in the 27, 28 year range. We definitely tried 30-year-old Springbank, still in wood, which was pretty epic. But I thought that there was like a quite an old, I'd have to go back and look through
Yeah,
my photos.
I'll see if I can pull anything up.
Yeah. So Harmony, why don't we start with you on the long row 21?
Sorry, what were the casks for this?
65 sherry, 35 bourbon, I believe.
Okay. I still get a decent amount of bourbon influence on here, but there are some soft like red fruit, dried fruit.
The smoke is
chocolate.
really nice. There's a nice elegance to the smoke on there. Like it's
pretty mild.
What's that?
It feels mild to
Yeah.
me.
Well, it's not that raw medicinal Isla peat. And the other thing about smoke and peat is after 20, 21 years, you'd expect it's going to mellow a fair bit.
Yeah, it smells really beautiful.
I did yeah, sorry, it was in 1994. You're right, it was way older than I remember.
Yeah. Well,
and refill bourbon too, which is, I mean, yeah.
I remember it being pretty stunning. And you know, again, being somebody who's been spoiled by choice and things to try, like that's why it's stuck in my head somewhere. So Sean, normally I would trust your memory over mine, but in that case, I think it made an imprint. What do you think of the Longbow 21?
The palate's awesome. Hey, it's got like a nice sweet smoke.
Truth be told, long row is my least favorite expression of theirs. There's going to be maybe some people who think it's sacrilege, but I don't know why. I think they're using worm tubs, I think, for the long row, I believe, and I think isn't it for the last of it, or no? Am I?
That's a good question. I mean,
I thought it was. I could be mistaken on it, but I found like Springbank was always my favorite. Well, no, sorry, Hazelburn was my favorite. Now Springbank's the favorite, and Kilkerran's growing on me. The only time I really love long row is like the one that we tried, and then the Society release that was 20 years because it was refill and it was older, and that was just like that was just the way it was. But I gotta be honest, it's kind of like builds on that love a little bit more, which means I probably warmed up to it more than I think I have.
Well, I mean, Sean, you probably don't remember the glory days when like long row 10 and 14 were around in like, I think one was in like a copper brown box. The other one was in a green box. And like, they were great whiskeys and were again, apparently older than the age statements on the boxes for reasons explicable only to Springbank. I tried to do quick digging. I didn't see anything about the worm tubs on long row. You might be right, but I don't remember that. But what I think is cool is that most of what we've seen is that the long row envy. We've not seen as many releases of long row over the years. And the sad reality of that is that like while it's good, it's just not great. And it's a bottling that's just never really kind of shone. And I think as a result, we've just not been exposed to as many long rows, and some of the ones we have been exposed to have been, you know, frankly a little weird. Like we've talked about this, and But I'm not a fan of the Long Row Red series. Like, I think there's one of those that I actually liked. The rest of them I thought were not great. Not my taste, trying to be diplomatic, because I know there's people that love them, and there's markets like the Nordics love those Long Row Red series. But for me, they're too meaty, they're too austere, they're too tannic. This is excellent. Like, this is what I want Long Row to be. Like, this is like an old school, elegant peated whiskey.
It looks like Kurt confirmed it. There's a worm off the second spirit still. He says he's not sure how it's being used by spirit type. I thought after being shown it, I asked, and they said it was for the Long Row specifically. I could be wrong on that, but I do recall something about that. Anyways, either way, worm tubs and me, like, it's not, I won't say that I don't like them, because it's not necessarily the case. I do, there's certain tones that will give in certain spirits that I'm not as much into. Like, I'm not that much into Mortlach. I'm not, and a few others. But then again, now there's a bunch of Craig Alekeys that I actually really enjoy. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just growing into it.
Maybe. But I mean, again, like, think about the Long Rows that came out. Like, there was a Gaia cask, a Long Row Gaia cask. And I mean, there was a, you know, we've talked about this. I mean, for those of you who don't do a lot of our tastings, you've not heard the majority of us rail on wine casks and how most distilleries use wine casks horribly, like utterly horribly. Like, they're wet filled, they're tannic, they're sulfury, they're just nasty. I think distilleries are getting better at how they use wine casks. Like, if you're leaving wine in the cask when you put the whiskey in, you're not doing it right. Unless it's Canadian whiskey, in which case you're allowed to do that. You are, in that case, doing it correctly. Whether it's good or not is a different matter. But that's been my frustration with Long Row, and I like seeing these more elegant profile. And I don't want to rant on this too much longer. There have been some good ones, but like most of those wine cast ones, I've just not liked at all. So, Sammy, we didn't let you talk about this one yet. We went off on a tangent.
For me, it's got a lot of raisin and a little bit of like a chalky taste to it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Chalky minerality. You can see that nice sort of ashy, smoky peat. A little bit of barbecue on there, but like, I don't know, for me, I don't really see this one as meaty, but it's got a little bit of a meatiness to it, but it's not like super, super meaty. Cool. Well, one last one to go through, and then we are on to the speed rounds. So the next one is the Kilkerran Heavily Peated, I believe, batch 9. And this is my first time trying this one, so I'm kind of excited to see how it goes. And see how it shows. While I'm doing that, Sean, do you want to lead us off on this one? I'm just going to try to find the specs and an image for this one. 90 bourbon, 10% sherry, 59.2%.
I mean, this has been sitting in the glass for what, an hour and like 20 minutes now. First and foremost, there's a ton of Tahitian vanilla coming off. It's very perfumey.
It's hot tubby. It's like lots of ozone, kind of almost a chlorine vibe to it too.
Yeah, it's like, for heavily peated, it's not coming across like on the nose like it's like super heavily peated. That's for sure.
It's more barnyardy, almost Ardmore-esque.
On the palate for sure, and it does kind of show a little bit of age on there with like that young rough and tumble kind of peat. Oh, there's a lot of like like, I don't know, like, anyone who's, maybe you smoke now. I used to smoke back in the day when you like had a cigarette outside and you had half of it and you kept it in your little pack or whatever. It used to smell so terrible. This on the palate is like the translation of that smell of an old cigarette butt.
Yeah, it's quite ashy. Harmony, you look like you're ready to chime in.
I love smoking references. 2 years of not smoking and I still want a cigarette. But for all the wrong reasons. Originally it was like marshmallow peats, campfire ash, kind of sweet and smoky. The palate is definitely farmy and ashy and heavy. But also presents this nice roundness coming through. It's like not it's definitely youthful, but it's you know, kind of tweening in its profile a little bit. And yeah, I actually like that kind of ashy minerality of kind of charcoal.
Sammy, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, for me on the nose, it smells like when you go to for a tour, at the distillery, it smells like the mash tun.
Yeah.
I got really strong smell of that like the the barley is still going through the fermentation.
Mm.
And then on the palate, I got a lot of it's more set. Well, it's not like an island peat, but it's like a campfire peat, and still got a lot of like fruit, a little bit of melon, like green apple for me.
It's interesting to me because like the cigar or the cigarette note is kind of interesting one. I typically only have a cigarette when I'm in Paris because I guess I kind of feel like I might as well while I'm there. Everyone else is doing it. But it reminds me of like those old school cigarettes that you had to roll yourselves, like the loose tobacco, like that kind of a cigarette. Um, the farminess is definitely there, but the funny thing is, like, I know this is young and I know it's like a little smoky, little tarry, but it's starting to go tropical under all that. Like, there's some really nice, like, bright tropical fruits just hiding below the surface, under the malt, under the salt, under the smoke, which I think is really cool. And the lemon pledge, David, is a great note on that, especially on the nose. I put that on a tasting note for a Kalila, I think, last week. Like, that's a cool note. All right, are we ready for the speed round? Okay. And Kurt's back, so Kurt, you can play along on this too, but normally what I do is go in a random order. However, this time we're going to go in the order of Sean, Harmony, Sammy, Kurt, and we'll just keep repeating that cycle so that I don't have to try to figure out who went first the previous time. So, speed round, Sean, go.
Nose was like a grape Kool-Aid powder on this thing. It's been sitting around for a while.
Maybe some
Palate's, to be honest, palate's almost kind of dead. Like it might be the peat from the last few drams, but not as much on the palate.
Well, it's tough to follow an active 7 single malts from J.A. Mitchell and Co. So I think that's the reality. It shows nicely, but yeah, I agree with you. It feels like it's not playing in the same stadium. Harmony?
It just feels thin and light to me. I still get that grain, kind of like that caramel note. It feels oaky, more oaky than it did the first time. Yeah. Not my favorite.
Cool. Sammy?
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit a more green whiskey, showing up on the nose, but on the palate, it's like I cannot really taste much.
Okay, Kurt?
Can you hear me in real time?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll buck the trend here. I still really love this one. It's top heavy, it's clumsy. It doesn't feel like there was a lot of art put into making it, but it still kind of works. And if I'm drinking blends, again, this is what I want. I still think
Kurt, I know it's not a perfect example of it, but it's a form of damning with praise. So it's not faint praise, but damning with praise. Like, I can tell they didn't try that hard, but it still tastes good. I mean,
no, I'm not saying they didn't try hard. I'm saying it's not done with some things are meant to be rough hewn and be beautiful, like a log home. Some things are meant to be down to beautiful perfection. This isn't something that's like fine tuned. This is rough and tumble, but it's still beautiful.
It works, so why tweak it?
Agreed.
Okay. Cool. Sean, or what are we on? Hazelburn 10. Oh man.
Yeah, Hazelburn 10. The nose translates well to what it was before. It hasn't changed a whole lot. The palate, I don't know what this flavor is. Like Tutti Frutti ice cream. I don't know what Tutti Frutti is, but that's what that on the palate. It's more. Yeah, the fruit bursts a little bit more on the front. It's way better than the bottle I currently have open, but I'm going to research that later.
Okay, very cool. Harmony.
Super fruity on the palate. I agree. The nose hasn't changed a lot. I get like nibs and like cream. It's really nice. Really good.
Creamsicle. I
Yeah.
was just thinking creamsicle.
Yeah.
Not like an orange creamsicle, but like, I don't know, were there lemon creamsicle ice creams things? I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe. Sammy?
Yeah, or just like a lemon meringue.
Lemon meringue. That would be delicious. If only I could Uber Eats one of those. Kurt?
The nose is still good. The palate though is awesome. I love Harmony's nibs note there. It's still vibrant on the palate. The nose kind of seems a little tamped down, but the palate is amazing. I love this one.
Yeah. Hazelburn 21, Sean.
It's the wood's starting to come out a little bit more on this. The palate is screaming a little bit more like dried Turkish apricot, and a little bit more. The texture is a little bit. It's developed a syrupy note that is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, there's like there's almost like a burlappy, like, you know, and I've used this before, like that Compass Box whiskey Velicor, which is like to convey the sense of old, dusty old books. Like there's almost something like that's like a dusty old book about this whiskey.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that it's like you go into that like the box of your like winter clothes or something, and it's like all toques and scarves. It's all fibrous.
Yeah. Sammy?
Yeah, it's a lot more like, more fruitier on the nose. I don't think, actually, taste that much different, for me, but it tastes quite a lot burger. Oh, that's
Okay.
what I can nose.
Kurt?
They have a disconnect between the nose and palate for me now. I think I'll flip the other way on this one and say I really like the nose. There's something really cool going on there. The palate's good. It's just not as special on the palate, I think.
Okay. Sean, we're back to Springbank 10.
The lack of the smoke is still kind of taking me for a bit of a ride, but on the palate, it's a little bit more kind of cinnamon sticky bun, maybe a little bit of lychee syrup on top or something.
Oh man, the cinnamon sticky bun are like I don't know if you've ever been, there's this town south of Calgary at the head of a very beautiful drive called the Cowboy Trail. And there's this place that makes cinnamon buns, and they're called butter buns. And they're like fresh baked in like a wood-fired stove in this like 100-year-old building. Like you nailed it. That totally reminds me of them. But like where the hell is the peat? Like this is almost like unpeated Springbank to me. Harmony?
Yeah, it's all of those things, and I'm getting just like a hint of tea or chamomile and like a gentle note of like licorice coming through, just like very soft. Maybe it's more chamomile, but black tea.
Or like maybe a bit of cardamom ice cream.
Maybe. Yeah, it's really nice. I like those tannins, like they're very expressive, kind of floral. It's very nice.
Sammy, sorry, you're up on the Springbank.
That's okay. Yeah, I cannot really nose that much anymore, on that whiskey. But like, on the palate, it's a lot of honey and like cinnamon spice. Yeah, like for me, yeah.
Kurt?
Man, that holds up beautifully. It's just perfectly balanced. Out of all of them, I think this one might be the most well constructed, where just everything is kind of in harmony there. And I'm agreeing with Harmony's notes there.
Sean, Kilkerran 16.
So it honestly, I think it's kind of rested more or less unchanged. In my head, I was thinking like I think it was Matthew who mentioned that the heavily peated is not their own malt. I don't want to like. Oh,
I think he said it was the other way. I think he said the heavily peated was from Springbank, but the unpeated or like.
No, I think it's the opposite.
It's the other way.
This is their malt. The heavily peated is not their malt, and I don't want to like have it in my head or anything, but like I think by the nose alone you could tell that like this just really has that same kind of floor malted note as everything else from there, and it still comes across so beautifully. Like I don't know, some people have heard me talk about it before. A lot of people haven't, but I am on this floor malted barley kick where that's all I want.
You're a hard customer to please, Sean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can you taste the Ben Wivis stills? No? Harmony?
I have to admit that I am saving half of my pours for a friend, and I
Oh.
don't have much in this glass. I have nothing in this glass. I licked a dribble that went on the outside to try to savor it. But I don't really have much to say other than the empty glass still smells very good.
Harmony, I don't care what Sammy says. You're a very nice person. I'm just kidding. Anyone who
I
knows
didn't say
Sammy,
any bad thing to
Sammy
her.
would never say a mean thing about anybody. Sammy, your turn.
Hey, like for me, it's a lot of like a melon, on the palate, and a little bit of like apple skin now,
Okay.
like a
Yeah,
red
the apple skin. Oh yeah. Anyone remember like the Quaker Harvest Crunch that had the little chunks of apple in there, and occasionally you get the little apple skins in there as well? That's a good one. Kurt?
I liked it more the first time around. The palate's not 100% working for me now this time. Nose is still very full.
Oh, you're almost an even harder customer than Sean.
Hey man, I'm still gonna be happy drinking these all night. And actually,
Oh.
Sammy, I'm the friend. Just sorry to disappoint you.
Long Row 21, Sean.
No, I think we're on Palo Cortado right now.
Are we on? Oh, we are on Palo Cortado. That's right. I've skipped one. Palo Cortado. This is the longest speed round we've done because there's 5 people in it. But Palo Cortado, Sean.
A lot more spice on the palate than I remember before. There's a bit more it's not full on cinnamon, but it's leaning towards that note.
That cinnamon butter spread, Sean.
Yeah, it's kind of buttery, and the wine itself comes through a little bit more now than it did before. Pretty neat. I think I like it a little bit better. Fresh pour.
Okay.
Yeah, to me, it's like taking on like the paper as you peel off the paper of a crayon. It's kind of got that like waxy kind of note to me. Definitely there's a lot of cinnamon, but yeah, I can't really get past the cinnamon and waxy paper.
Harmony, I'm with you, except for me, it's more like the paper around a panettone because I don't mess with crayons, but I will mess with panettones.
I don't like panettone and I love to color. So we're opposites. We could
That's
both be
right.
happy hanging out with panettone and crayons.
Quite. This one though is like we talked about this with the number ones. The nose to me is quite chalky.
Mhm.
Sammy, far away.
On the palate, it's a little bit more citrus, coming through, this time around, and I still can taste, the wine, which is actually, is a really nice, well balanced, whiskey for a wine class.
Yeah. Kurt?
Not overly winey. You get the kind of wine flavors without a crappy sour finish, which is amazing. I really like that. If you told me this was a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old whiskey from somewhere else in the world that was just put into aggressive casks, I would believe it. I think the cask hides everything that's kind of Springbank about this. I still like it, but that's why I kind of said it's like Catalan meets Hamburg meets Springbank. There's something weird about it. I like it a lot, but it's weird.
The palate to me has gone big time like cinnamon hearts.
Taking on lemon for me, lemon zest.
Okay. All right, Sean, we're now on to Long Row.
Now it's the long row. So now it's turning into something that I actually quite enjoy. It's the weird, the weird savory notes are kind of gone, although it does show like a pretty good portion of wine that's not too winey. Like peat's still present more on the palate than the nose, though, to be honest. And I don't know. Yeah, now I dig it. Now I dig it.
I haven't tasted it again, but to me now it's like walnuts, blue cheese, and prosciutto. All in
Cool.
like a nice little, nice proper proportions.
Oh, like young green walnut, almost like those candied green walnuts we used to get from next door peasant.
Oh, the palate on that's great. That's old. Again, I still like this. It's an old school Long Row. It's an old school peated whiskey. It's not overly peated. Like I think I would have a hard time distinguishing this between Springbank and Long Row, but man, it's good. Harmony.
You can skip me because I agree with what you said.
Done. Sammy?
Yeah. Well, actually, I actually quite like this one too. It's actually, a quite nice, balance between the sherry and the whiskey itself.
Kurt?
I really liked your notes, and I like you and Sean kind of tag teaming on the walnut kind of thing going on there. Totally agree with that. Come back to that Flintstone vitamin mineral kind of candy-ish note. It's a little bit chalky and stuff. And
So
then
classy.
I know, Andrew, you had a bottle not long ago. I still got one here too. Sean had it, probably Harmony and Sammy at your place. I'm not 100% sure, but that old peated Glen Keith, that signatory release called Glen Isla, the 1977, that kind of clay, minerally, peachy kind of thing going on here. It's
Yeah.
very much like that. Really cool to see.
I don't even know if I still have that one or if it's gone, but I'm gonna go looking for it.
That's a great whiskey, and this is a great whiskey. I love this.
I
Okay.
think that came out at your party. I remember seeing
No.
that bottle.
Was treated unkindly.
Probably. Yeah.
No. That I think there's some left. I don't think we abused that one.
To be honest, I wouldn't have cared because you get to a point where like some of the stuff needs to get drunk. So, but anyway, I digress. Sean, Kilkerran Batch 9,
Dude, it's
industrial
so
peated barley. It's not turned by hand. Can you taste the like stainless steel shovels pushing it around a malt drum?
yeah, and the guy stepped in dog shit on the way to the no. It's really intense. It's actually this is easily the most intense, crazy thing that we have. I'm glad it was last, but nice. It still has that really youthful peat, like big, real intense in your face. I couldn't even like wager, I guess, as to how old these things are, but it's fine. I like it more than the first time I had it. I think it rests well in the glass.
Yeah, it's fun, it's approachable, it's good value, but like this could be Ardmore, this could be like peated Waterford, like it's not, but it's still good. I like it. I think but yeah, it doesn't scream Springbank or Long Road to me. Harmony?
Good call on the Waterford.
Yeah, actually, big time. It's like dirty burlap sack in my cattle farm barn. And then there's like this kind of bright apple note that comes in on like the mid palate. And then it just goes all sorts of smoky and done it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sammy?
Yeah, I still can smell like the mash tun, but the nose is actually not as strong for this time around.
Very malty.
And yeah, you still can taste it's a really young spirit, and the pitch is actually it's a little bit strong than the other one, but it's not as bad as some of those young Island whiskey.
Kurt?
I was all glitchy and stuff when you guys were going through it the first time, but I could hear you in real time. I wanted to scream Kalila. The nose on this is so Kalila to me, or those like peated, very naked Bunnahabans. The palate though is so much sweeter, like not even comparable to that. But the nose blindly, I always said Kalila. The palate, I think, is just different because of those different fermentation times, different yeast they're using, and not those massive Kalila style stills and stuff. But very, very cool. Not even remotely what I would have expected for Kilkerran.
Kurt, what you missed was peated Waterford. Think about that. Like it reminds me of some of those like Mark Renier wine cask, bourbon sherry, like Van Du Natural, like that mixture of casks and peat, because it's very, very barley forward too. So, but anyway, all right. So we've had our lineup. I'm going to ask my 4 other co-hosts to pick their favorites. In the interim, I'm going to trigger the poll here, so you all get to vote. And I did check ahead of time. Evan did create a poll. He's asked 3 questions. We'll have to see what the cheeky third question is, because that's normally something he does. To procure alternative to Springbank. Oh, love it. All right. Anyway, the last answer on that is wrong, but everything else in there is interesting. I'll let you guys have some fun with that. But I'm going to stick to my original order here and start off by putting Sean on the spot to pick his three favorites. So 1, 2, and 3, Sean. What are your favorites tonight?
Oh man. Okay, so this is, God damn it. Okay, so I think the one that surprised me the most was the Kilkerran 16.
Okay.
That was that I'm gonna say that's number one for me.
Wow. Okay.
It surprised me the most. It was the most enjoyable and everything all about that. Number two, the Long Road 21. Not necessarily because of the first time, but specifically because of the second time we went through it.
Mhm.
And the third, ooh, I'm gonna say the Hazelburn 21. I was gonna say the Springbank 10, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I like it as much as previous year's releases. So Hazelburn 21, third place.
Tough but fair. Thanks, Sean. All right, Harmony.
Yeah, Kilkerran 16, I told my friend I would split these with him, and I almost did not split the 16. So I think that speaks for itself. And I really liked the Hazelburn 21. And then it's kind of a toss-up for me between like the last two. I can really get behind the Palo Cortado, and I can also get behind the Long Road 21. Like I liked them both for different reasons.
Okay, cool. Sammy.
Oh, you're muted, Sammy.
Mhm.
Hazelburn 21 is my number one. Number two is the Springbank Palo Cortado cast. And then the third is the Long Road 21.
Okay, cool. Kurt.
Yeah, number one for me, no surprise, the long row. That's probably my favorite stuff they make.
Long row.
Number two, the Hazelburn 10, Rockstar Tonight. I loved it. Really, really cool whiskey. And number three, I'm gonna go with the Springbank Palo Cortado, which normally is not even close to my style, but I just want to spend more time with it, so I'm kind of digging it. Tonight, it's a neat one.
Kurt, I think your internet connection wants you to spend more time with your guitar, so it's trying to like cut you out of the tasting. Because you froze on us again.
But we did get the picks. We just didn't get all the
We
reasons.
did get the picks, but go and be with your guitar, Kurt, and thank you. I'm Long Row 21, Kilkerran 16, and then the Palo Cortado. I didn't think that last one would be in my top three, but man, it's good. All right, here we go. The polls, if you haven't voted, and 6 of you have not, you have 30 seconds to vote. Click your vote or it won't be counted. I'm talking to probably mostly the people whose cameras are off. Maybe you stepped away to the bathroom for a moment or who knows. But you have 15 seconds, we'll say, until we call the polls there, and then we'll share the results. I want to thank everybody for taking part in the tasting. There will be a email in the next 20 minutes with a ballot as promised for tonight's tasting. There are only a handful of bottles of the Palo Cortado, so please adjust your expectations accordingly. However, there are a few other gems in there, so hopefully most of you will get a bottle of something from it. But that is that. And the 6 of you who haven't voted haven't figured it out, so it's too late. The people have spoken, and the winner for favorite whiskey is the Palo Cortado, followed by the Long Row 21, and then a tie between the Hazelburn 21 and Springbank 10. For second favorite whiskey, it's Kilkerran 16-year edging out the Palo Cortado and the Long Row 21. So I think it's pretty clear what the top 3 were tonight. Those are your top 3 for sure. And then to procure alternative Springbank, Evan's random question of choice. Glen Scotia, Ben Romick, Daft Mill, Ardnamurchan, or Pappy. and Ben Romick came in first and Glen Scotia second. So there you go. Fun results. I've shared them there. I'll leave them up for a moment if you want to have a look at them. Nobody buy Glen Scotia because Sammy wants to be able to continue buying it. Yeah, you know, there are some great options out there for whiskeys that are good, that are not as sought after. You know, Ben Romick, Glen Scotia, Craig Illicky, a lot of those that have been mentioned are all good options. Ardnamurchan is a great option. Spoiler alert, we've got the first store exclusive Ardnamurchan cask for at least Canada, possibly North America, coming probably in the fall. So we're excited about that. But yeah, great lineup tonight. I'm glad everyone enjoyed it. Balakin is just the worst. Chris doesn't want you buying Balakin. So there you go. People have got their little hidden gems that they want to keep all to themselves. So there you go. So thanks everybody. Thanks you, Sean, Harmony, Sammy, Kurt. Thanks everybody who bought a ticket for tonight's tasting. Genuinely hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk again soon. And yeah, stay tuned for a FOMO email in the not too distant future. So
Awesome. Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Andrew.
bye.
Bye.